So it's been a pretty wild couple of weeks for the MCU. The Marvels dropped a couple of weeks ago and was, well, not very good, to put it nicely. And now we have Loki season 2 coming to an end in the same week, and it almost couldn't be any different. The Marvels was awful and has flopped big time. Make sure you check out my video on the Marvels if you haven't already. And to contrast that, Loki has been a pretty big hit on Disney Plus, both in terms of viewers and in terms of quality. It's been no mystery to anyone that these MCU shows on Disney Plus have not helped the MCU in its post-Endgame slump. If anything, it's absolutely ruined the MCU and led to its oversaturation problem. But the first season of Loki was always a pretty decent addition to the MCU. Season 2, on the other hand, has, in my opinion, bumped the show up to definitively become the best MCU show to date. Meaning that Marvel have released arguably their worst film and their best show in the same week, which is just wild, to be honest. Season 2 of Loki features many things that most MCU shows just don't have. An intriguing story, huge stakes, strong characters, excellent performances, and a contribution to the overarching MCU narrative. Loki was the first time where I was watching an MCU series and I felt like I wasn't wasting my time, that it wasn't a chore to sit through. Although I wouldn't consider this show to be a masterpiece, as it definitely does have some problems, and we will get into that. But this is by far, for me at least, the best MCU show to date, and we're going to dive deep into why that is. So I think it's safe to say that Loki Season 2 has been a breath of fresh air for the MCU. It seems like we've just been on a rampage, tearing to shreds lackluster and terrible MCU contributions recently. So it's really nice to have something good to say about a Marvel product for once. I did not think it would come in the form of a Disney Plus series, but here we are. Loki is holding the MCU afloat going into 2024, and it kind of feels like it's the Andor of the MCU. A show that is just so different from the rest of the current shows and films that it almost feels out of place. A major criticism of the Andor series was it didn't feel like Star Wars, and it was kind of like, yeah, that's kind of the point, because modern Star Wars is pretty bad. So with Loki, that was the vibe I got instantly. It feels like a completely different studio has helmed this show. A complex narrative with an interesting and artistic atmosphere, making the character of Loki the center point of the show and actually contributing something to an overarching narrative. It just feels like it's on a whole nother level from the rest of the Marvel films and shows. And I'll tell you what's also on a whole nother level: NordVPN, this video's sponsor. You like that segue? Yeah, I made it myself. As a YouTuber, privacy online is a big factor for me, and NordVPN definitely has my back as the fastest VPN on the planet. With just one click, you can protect yourself online and stay safe from malware, trackers, ads, all the bad stuff. You'll also be notified if someone leaks your credentials, which gives you seriously good peace of mind. NordVPN also does not track what you do online, so, you know, all of you weirdos who like feet, you can rest easy. Now, we here in Australia love our Australian rules football, and I was in Indonesia earlier this year and I couldn't watch my team play because I was out of the country. But with a few clicks, I was technically back in Australia and was able to watch my team play, and I'm pretty sure we lost anyway. NordVPN also comes with a mountain of other perks and features, including 24/7 customer support, one account that can protect up to 6 devices, dedicated apps for all major platforms, and the list goes on. Now, I actually have an exclusive deal with NordVPN, which you can get through my link below, which will land you an extra 4 months on a 2-year plan. And again, there's a 30-day money-back guarantee, so it's risk-free, but I'll tell you what's not risk-free: surfing the net without a VPN. So protect yourself online and secure your personal data and internet activity with NordVPN through that link below. And thank you to NordVPN for sponsoring this video. Loki Season 2 is an incredibly complex look into a character that we have known and loved for over a decade now. Regardless of what you think about the MCU, the vast majority of people would say that they really enjoy Tom Hiddleston's portrayal of Loki and the redemption arc that the character has endured. And I'm pleased to say that this series ended a strong redemption arc for one of the MCU's best characters. Redemption arcs in films and shows are straight up one of the best arcs a character can follow. They're incredibly satisfying, and it's nice to have an intense hatred for a character develop into a love for the character. Over time, you see why they do what they do, you see them discover the error of their ways and the path they create towards redemption. This is why Jaime Lannister was my favorite character in Game of Thrones, until season 8 literally threw his arc in the toilet and flushed it into oblivion.
And for every one of the million people in that city, innocent or otherwise.
To be honest, I never really cared much for them. Innocent or otherwise.
Fuck off.
But I digress. It was nice to see Loki's redemption arc be the center point and takeaway of this show. We got a redemption arc for the Loki we knew through phases 1 to 3 of the MCU, from being the jealous brother of Thor to sacrificing himself for Thor. But then we kind of got a second round for the character, with 2012 Avengers Loki going to the TVA to undergo a second redemption. The Loki series did a fantastic job of setting his redemption up. Loki comes to the TVA seeking a throne to rule. It's always what he wanted. And they managed to tie his redemption into him taking a throne. Only said throne comes at the cost of sacrificing himself to save trillions across the timelines. In the show's finale, there's a ton of character work and vulnerability brought out for the character when Sylvie gets him to admit that he doesn't want to be alone. That's his biggest fear, yet he still sacrifices himself to take a lonely throne, highlighting how far the character has actually come. This is the kind of character work that is so annoyingly absent in post-Endgame MCU, and it's a real nice breath of fresh air, and the fact this show focused so much on the character of Loki makes it the best character study for any MCU show to date. You could argue WandaVision did a good job exploring Wanda as a deeper and more complex character, but that show kind of lost its mind towards the end, whereas Loki did the complete opposite. Therefore, I feel comfortable saying that Loki did it better. Now, for as much as I praise the Loki show for being a great piece of character work for Loki specifically, it's not a perfect show. It's not a masterpiece. It has problems. Patience is absolutely required for season 2 of Loki. I've seen a lot of people complain about how slow it can be and that there is filler, and although I completely disagree on the take that a lot of the show is filler, I will say it takes its time maybe a little more than it needs to, especially considering this is yet another 6-episode Disney Plus series, which I don't even need to go on a tangent over the whole 6-episode a season thing. Now, due to the show really taking its time and having such a short number of episodes, it results in a finale where a lot happens. They could definitely have paced the season out a little better to allow certain moments to breathe. It felt like the first 4 episodes, although relatively strong, slowly made their way through the story, and then episode 5 and the finale specifically just had to power on through the story with a lot to do. Speaking of said story, it does get a little too convoluted for its own good. There are certain moments where the show can get a little bit confusing. There's a lot going on, and when you bring timelines and variants into the equation, things can get a little all over the place. And there were times where I felt like the show was buckling under its own complexity, almost like it was trying to take too much on, especially in the final half of the season. A major complaint I've seen about the series so far is that it's very confusing, and I can certainly sympathize with people that feel that way. At the same time though, I feel like this is almost a major complaint because all the other MCU shows are easy to watch and easy to follow. They don't really challenge the viewer. This comes back to what I said earlier about Loki feeling like the Andor of the MCU. It takes its time and it doesn't apologize for it. It goes a little deeper when it comes to the story, the characters, the symbolism, the themes, and all the intricate stuff that most people tuning into these kinds of shows don't really expect. It goes a little heavy-handed, and I think that has caught a lot of people off guard, much like Andor caught many Star Wars fans off guard. It's also worth noting that the characters surrounding Loki were extremely likable this time round, which is a fresh change of pace from many MCU shows. Mobius remains as one of the best side characters in any MCU project to date. Granted, we all love Owen Wilson, but I could watch scenes where Mobius and Loki sit at a table with a key lime pie all day long. It's fun to hang out with these characters, and I just can't believe I'm saying this about an MCU show in 2023. It also must be said that Loki has some of the best cinematography I've seen in a Marvel show to date. Granted, good cinematography does not make your show great. Falcon and the Winter Soldier had incredibly strong cinematography, but that show was a bit of a letdown.
You've got to do better, Senator.
But the way it's used in Loki to help build this moody atmosphere gave the show some character that most other Marvel shows and even films just don't have anymore. Most MCU projects these days tend to look the same. Big, digital, CGI-infused schlock. But it feels like some time and care was actually put into this series. There are several one-takes in this show that swoop around the characters that reminded me of Mike Flanagan's The Haunting of Hill House. Even the shots where actors are performing directly into the lens offers a different perspective from the stereotypical over-the-shoulder shots you see with literally everything. There was something experimental about Loki, and I really liked that. Even the finale lent into a bit of cosmic horror in a way. It just felt like there was much more thought put into this show, from the way it was filmed, and although not perfect, the weaving of the complex story into the writing, to the care that was shifted onto characters specifically. It just feels nothing like other MCU shows, and despite not being perfect, it still leaves them all for dead. But the fact of the matter is, this is just the best Marvel has right now. And a subscriber brought this up in a community post where they mentioned that it's time to panic if a TV series is carrying your multi-billion-dollar IP, and that a show like Loki should be an appetizer and not the main course. And I think my guys hit the nail on the head, to be honest. Realistically, movies like the Marvels should be a bigger deal than they are, and shows like Loki should be something to enjoy off on the side. But I think Loki and the Marvels dropping at the same time kind of highlights where Marvel are going wrong, and you'd really hope that they're actually going to learn from it this time. So one of the more interesting parts that lead to why Loki is so impressive despite it not being a certified masterpiece of a show is that it released on Disney+. Like it or not, Disney+ and the shows released haven't exactly installed a positive stigma among viewers. Whether it's Marvel, Star Wars, or Lucasfilm products like Willow, there are more misses than hits, to put it lightly. And I briefly touched on this earlier, but a lot of MCU shows on Disney+ stick to a 6-episode a season formula, and nobody likes it, let's be honest. Most shows feel like film scripts that have been stretched out to accommodate Disney being competitive in the streaming wars. And although Loki is one of, if not the best shows on Disney+, it doesn't buck this trend whatsoever. It's still a part of the problem. It still, at times, feels like a film script that has been stretched out to make a series. Like it or not, when a show is relatively good on Disney+, people treat it quite well because most people expect a certain level of quality, or lack thereof. It's like with HBO Max. There's a certain level of quality that's expected. An HBO 8 out of 10 is much better than a Disney+ 8 out of 10. Unfortunately, there is a rotten stigma surrounding Disney+ shows, especially in the past couple of years. It started strong with shows like The Mandalorian and even WandaVision, but since then, it's been pretty rough terrain for the streaming service. And the MCU shows have been no exception. It is truly nice in 2023 to tune into a show on Disney+ and walk away not being disappointed. And that's exactly what Loki delivered. A show worthy of investment, with a strong emphasis on character. A show that feels like it was written by people with talent, which is just something you barely see under Disney-related products these days. Although it's got some bumps along the road, this is easily one of, if not the best shows on Disney+, period. And thanks to everything we discussed in this video, the best MCU show on Disney+, that finally feels like a worthy addition to the MCU, as opposed to just another throwaway show. What Thor Ragnarok did for Thor, I feel like the Loki series has done the same for Loki, making him an all-time MCU character. So, Loki Season 2 goes down as a rare win for the MCU. It's nice to cap off 2023 on a positive note for Marvel for a change. It really feels like a change of pace. So make sure you let me know your thoughts on Loki down in the comments below. Drop a like if you enjoyed the video, subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and most importantly, take care.